We got Wheelmind podcast episode 3, biomagnification, a big one. I think it's also called bioamplification. And yeah, this word popped up on a random late night internet rabbit hole. I think it explains those little secret shadows in your head that have no explanation. Maybe you've been to therapy. Maybe you've tried medication. People apologize and that should have resolved something. Maybe you've apologized thinking that would resolve something. I'm not talking about those moments, situations where we definitely should apologize or someone should make something right or there's blame going around. Rightly so, right? That's not what this is about. And discerning what is what between those two things is a whole nother topic, of course, which I wish I had intelligence, wisdom to point out, because I think blame is one of the most detrimental pieces to our everyday life right now. We have a completely rogue mentality when it comes to blame. And you'll notice I'm a little off topic real quick here because we gotta make a little foundation here for biomagnification, and it does tie into some healthy ways to look at blame. Realize blaming people just because there's some lazy part of me that wants to be angry with something I don't like. You know, the casual, quick blame, you see it in politics and government. It's all over the place where there's something we don't like, there's immediate blame toward some other group or specific person. I've realized through biomagnification, it's going to get tied together here. I've realized through biomagnification, that biological setup, observational thing there with animals, the food chain, blame as a casual response is extremely brainless. We are better than that. We as a species, capable, intelligent, built the pyramids, built Empire State Building, Great Wall of China, coming from that same capability and to suddenly so quickly give up entirely, blame just because we don't like something, we don't agree with something. It's like a world famous chef working at McDonald's. It's a world famous chef being happy with cheese from a squeeze bottle. That level of insanity. So that is a little plug at the very beginning through biomagnification. Blaming people for things I don't like about myself. Maybe parents, maybe church leaders, maybe some teacher back in the day who didn't maybe respect me, notice me, whatever it is. It's such an incomplete mindset, and that is because in biomagnification you have, where's my graph? There's the graph. So if you're unfamiliar, maybe you've already Googled it, here is biomagnification, and it's really interesting how this works out, and it makes sense now why mercury poisoning has such a stigma with it. You have a little tiny creature almost on the microscopic level, right? It might as well be microscopic. You're not going to notice it, but it's the basis for the food chain, right? You have all these little tiny creatures. Here's what's crazy is that those little tiny creatures nibble the little tiniest speck of toxin. And what's crazy is that works its way up the food chain with each successive bigger animal chowing down. That little tiny toxin does not fade out. And this is almost counterintuitive because I'm kind of dumb, right? I would think throughout each bigger animal eating a tiny little animal with an even tinier part of toxin, that toxin would dissipate. And yet biomagnification is the magnification, exponential magnification of that toxin as it sits in the fat tissues and wherever. Each animal ending up with a big animal like a human, it becomes very toxic. The light bulb went on in my brain as I was reading this because there's things in my life that I know, and I got to be treading a little carefully here. Of course, there's situations where you do need therapy, you need counseling, you need to get away and take a vacation and get a different perspective. Of course, there's good friends can solve, right? You quit that job, go get another job. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about things handed down to me. And this is where the blame comes in. Maybe you're wondering why I started with blame and had a whole little soapbox about blame. Because first thing, I realized that all of the blame I have put on specific people because, I don't like how I didn't like myself when I was in high school, right? Oh, I was so insecure and nerdy in high school. I hated that. So I'm going to blame my parents, blame my Sunday school teachers too. Why not? Here's the crazy thing. Biomagnification says, and this is where I'm getting a little creative. I'm not a sociologist or got any sort of psychological, certificates or nothing, pointing out that it makes so much sense how biomagnification says that my unfair blame on people just because I don't like something, it says that they've been blaming people for the exact same thing. This is going back a few generations. Just suddenly made so much sense about, in nature, you have this little tiny trivial amount of toxin that by itself, in that little tiny amount, that no one's even going to care. As it works its way up the food chain, think about this. It was handed down each generation. By the time it got to you and me, it had exponentially grown into a massive, deadly poison. Let me know if that doesn't make sense in the comments. I have a feeling some of you are watching this and you're like, no way. Because that's what I've been thinking. I've been thinking for 10 years now, no way. That makes so much sense. Why I was so insecure in high school for absolutely no reason. Because I look back at all my years of high school and college too. I completely wasted high school and college because I gave up before I even started. I went in to each day in high school expecting disappointment, loneliness, same thing in college. I did not learn at all. I went 5.5 years of college at a world famous university, and you would think, at least halfway through, you would think you'd start having a good time at least. You'd at least have made a couple friends. We're not even talking about unhealthy habits. There's at least a baseline of minimum expectations. You join the robotics club or you get a ham radio, doing something that gives you a little zest, a little joy. That did not happen. 15 years now after college, 20 years after high school, and I'm like, there is no explanation. I have not looked into therapy for this. I have not taken any medication. I am 100% convinced biomagnification answers why, millions of others were so down on themselves. There's an epidemic of people who are depressed and lacking motivation. They feel like a failure and they haven't even done anything yet, right? It's this terrible irony where we have the most options. We are the most spoiled generation of all of human history. We have so much already before we even start working. And I'm just pointing out, for some of us, maybe it's only 5%. My theories so far are a bit radical. I think that's a fair way to put it. Oh, you can't even see me now. Got to make sure we have eye contact through my sunglasses. Right? How does this hit you? Just to recap real quick, the tendency to blame people so quickly, to blame even a whole group, whether it's government, a church, a business, just because we don't like something, that is unfair on us. And I just want to point that out. Maybe the first thing I really should say here is, hey, you are doing great. Like, you're doing way better than you think you are. And you should be celebrating that. Sure, you're taking a vacation, go work out, use all those talents and gifts you have. And the second thing is knowledge, right? It's been so helpful to me just in my own little desperate clawing at some sense of mental health. It's been so good to realize that all the things I blamed people for, they have also blamed other people for. And we end up in this whole stupid, sad circle of just blaming people, right? There's like a rat race of business, chasing the dollar. There's also a rat race of blame and failure to understand what is responsible. Because of course, I'm not going to fix that much of my history, right? But of course I can fix my future. There's a point in everyone's life where, maybe it's 32 years, arbitrary number, but maybe it's 32 years, nothing was your fault. But the next 32 years, they're all going to be your fault. Really what it comes down to here with the blame. What number is it for you? I'll say for me, it was about 26. The first 26 years of my life, I realized everything I did, I trusted everyone else way too much and did what they said and what they thought and what I expected them to want me to do. It was terrible. It was completely awful in every single aspect, as I've already explained. I have no positive memories until about 22 years old. Somewhere in between 22 and 26, 27, 28, I started thinking for myself and realizing all these opinions people have, even at their very best, even at their most intelligent, wisdom, whatever full, amazing answer to prayer they even happen to have in that moment, it's going to change. It's not going to stay consistent with anything in my life. And I think that's one of the hardest things we do not handle well, is noticing how even really good advice does not stay relevant. Being thankful is that good psychological trick. If you're a multimillionaire who's super happy, what would you be doing? What would your life look like? And the best part of that silly scenario is that probably 60% of the things you would do as a super happy multimillionaire, 60% of that life you think you would be living, you can already do right now. You do not have to wait to be a multimillionaire who's really happy and fulfilled to actually live like it. And that took way too long to realize as well. So in between years, 28 to now, over 10 years later, I've had to put together, what am I really supposed to do? Everyone has opinions, and yet no one really cares. So anyway, thanks for listening to this ramble. I hope your day is going fantastic. What is the third point? That's up to you. Good beginning to some healthy discussion. Trauma is not an easy topic at all. So I'll have to do something happy for episode 4. So anyway, thank you for the views. Pound that like button. Smash the subscribes. Watch my whatever. I got 3,000 videos now, I think. So hopefully you'll like something. Peace.